Hello and welcome to this Beam Me Out video. Today we're focusing on Paper 2 GCSE English Language and question 4, which is our comparison of point of view perspectives. Be useful for this video if you had access to a pen, some paper and your 100% sheets. So a reminder of the question order for Paper 2 GCSE English Language. We begin with question 5, which is imagine this. We then move on to question 4, the question that we're focusing on today. We then move on to question 3, spending 18 minutes on question 3, which is our how question. Then moving on to question 1, identifying 4 things that are true, 5 minutes. And finally ending with question 2, our summarised question, spending 12 minutes on this one. Here's a reminder of our 100% sheet for paper 2. You can see box A contains the question order, box B, discourse markers. Pay particular attention to contrasting today because we'll be looking at 2 sources. Box C, D and E contain all of the appropriate methods. And here on the next side of the 100% sheet you can see the boxes reminding you of how to approach each question. So we're looking at box F and box G. Box G is an extension of methods because in this particular question, to identify the point of view and the perspective, tone is really important. You can see here various aspects of tone. You can have quite an optimistic tone. You can be quite resigned, almost like you're accepting something unpleasant. You can't do anything about it. You could be tolerant. You could have a questioning tone, a pleased tone, sceptical, emotional, enthusiastic, pessimistic, accepting, challenging, a critical tone, a suspicious tone. Sometimes you can feel a sense of resentfulness, so feeling or expressing bitterness, quite a rational tone, these logical beliefs, and you can have an open-minded tone as well. Also, you can see there at the top, box F just reminds you of how to approach this question. We begin with an overview, linking both sources together. We then focus on an aspect of viewpoint, linking in some evidence, some quotes, talking about a method, making that inference, going to town on a fact, feeding in another quotation to cross-reference, using a connective, however, in contrast on the other hand, making a point about the perspective of the other writer, and repeating the whole process above for the next quote. So here's a reminder of the assessment objective for this particular question. It's AO3. Compare writers' ideas and perspectives, as well as how these are conveyed across 2 or more texts. And you have an example of a question here. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different perspectives on surfing. Clear focus to the question here. It's the perspective that they have on surfing. In your answer, you could compare the different perspectives on surfing, compare the methods the writers use to convey their perspectives, and support your response with reference to both texts being pivotal. It's worth 16 marks. In a nutshell for this question, students, you have to demonstrate an understanding of ideas and attitudes in both texts, comparing those ideas and attitudes, and you have to compare the methods used to show these attitudes. So methods are absolutely critical here. What methods could you use? All of those methods on your 100% sheet. And the methods here. So for example, you may find that you want to comment on verbs. It might be a metaphor, a simile, repetition. Tone is very important because with tone that links directly to perspective and point of view. So here on this particular page you can see some of the methods you may include. It's really important that we're not feature spotting and the method we select links closely to the perspective and the point of view of the writer. Let's just remind ourselves of the question. And you'll recognise this question from your work in the classroom. For this question, you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different perspectives on surfing. In your answer, you could compare the different perspectives on surfing, compare the methods the writers use to convey their perspectives, and support your response with references to both texts. Okay, so on this particular slide, we'll take some time to look at the approach and an exemplar response. So looking at the left of the slide, you can see here is a reminder of the approach. We begin with an overview of both sources. We then identify the perspective and point of view in source A. We then include a piece of evidence and an appropriate method, making sure that we analyse this effectively. We then cross-reference further in source A, and then we use a connective and we complete the same process for source B. Here, in the blue circles at the top, it reminds us of the perspective of each writer. In source A, the writer is aspiring to be one of them being the surfers. In source B, the writer appreciates the surfers from afar. Let's now read the model response with reference to the approach. Both writers admire the surfing. In source A, Doyle is dazzled and desperate to take part, aspiring to become one of them. Whereas in source B, Bird appreciates the surfing display as a spectator from afar. Here, we successfully have our overview. In source A, Doyle is at home, not a tourist, and idealises the surfers, metaphorically describing them as bronze gods, viewing them as supernatural beings, tanned and confident. Having established his hopes at the start, Doyle shows the progression of his dream as the text develops, like a wave, with his first attempt at surfing as the climax or the crest, and ending with the humorous image of himself spread-eagled on the shore in the final line, echoing structurally his first experience of surfing. So we can see here this chunk fulfills the evidence and method, the inference, and then we have a further cross-reference here. In contrast, we now move over to source B. In contrast to Doyle, Bird shows no interest in learning to surf. She's happy just to watch the wonderful exploits from the shore. She uses a rhetorical question to suggest she thinks the world of surfing feels like being on holiday. Is it always afternoon here, I wonder? Suggesting she can hardly believe the relaxed, joyful atmosphere among the surfers and spectators, which seems to last all day. So you may want to pause the video here and remind yourself of the approach, how ensuring you have a perspective is critical, and then the model paragraph. Ideally, you would need 2 of these in your response. So that concludes our Beam Me Out video on paper 2, question 4, which is the comparison of point of views and perspectives. You may want to rewatch this video as you approach your exams.